Hey, good day. You've reached Michael Rishi Forrester, a senior technical trainer and DevOps advocate with WebAge Solutions. WebAge Solutions provides custom technical training, and we're here today to talk about how we handle virtual instructor-led classes. Our main emphasis with virtual instructor-led classes is around retention and breaking habits of consumption, because when you take a virtual class, one of the challenges is that you're in an environment that you already know. You're in an environment that you're familiar with, and you have habits when you sit in this environment for what you're going to read, what you're going to focus on, whether you're going to do your Amazon shopping, you're going to listen to, a podcast, look at Facebook, do your work, versus taking in new information from, say, me, if I'm teaching, for example, a cloud practitioner's class. So let's say, for example, I'm teaching the cloud practitioner class, and we're going through module 2 of Cloud Practitioner Essentials. And I've got my clicker, and I'm clicking through the labs, and I'm telling you just how amazing and valuable from a business and technical perspective, the cloud is. And we do this for a while, and then we get to the end. I talk about the benefits of EC2, and suddenly we switch gears and we go over to the labs, which are awesome. And that lecture lab combination is really great. And we use that frequently to teach, especially honestly, if I'm reading off the lectures notes, because your retention is going to increase. But one of the things that we encourage like handwritten note taking. Like I have a notebook right here, and I recommend that you take notes just like I do, so that you will reach your retention orders of magnitude if you actually take notes, even if you never look at them again. So we have cameras on though, so that we can see the students. And if there was more than just myself on here, what you'd see is in the upper right-hand side up here, you'd see a lot more students. Now, the other thing that's worth talking about is that this works great for a virtual class, but what if I'm hybridized? What if I'm teaching a class and I have people who are on the virtual, conference call as well? Well, we have this little device here called an owl, and I'm going to show up a mirror so you can see it. So that might look a little creepy for a second, but the owl is a 360-degree camera that as I move around the room, let's say I come over here to do my whiteboard spacing, and I'm over here drawing my whiteboard. Well, what happens is that the main camera, will actually shift focus, and it'll start focusing on me and how I'm talking and what I'm doing. And then as I move around the room and I come right back to my primary perch or primary seat, it'll recenter itself right here. So you can see my face, you can see what I'm doing. So if I decide to draw on a whiteboard, you can actually see what's going on and what's happening. So we focus on the camera in the lower left-hand side when we want that face-to-face up-close interaction and I'm lecturing and talking. And then if I get up and move around, the owl will take over and you'll see that as well. You'll also see other students in here. So everybody can put a human face to names and really understand how the lectures function and what's going on there. Now, let's say we've done a lecture module and we want to challenge your retention and see if you remember what we've talked about. One thing that we'll also do is we'll switch to an environment that lets us see, for example, like a Jeopardy game, for example. So, So let's say we're playing a Jeopardy game and we're coming back up here and we want to test and see if you remember storage. For example, here's a question. What kind of storage is S3? Is it block, object, file, network, or archival storage? And S3 standard, right, let's say that they guess is object level storage, which would be accurate, right, in a generic sense. And so we run Jeopardy games as we go through these official AWS content to kind of continue to get your attention, get you focused, get you engaged. Sometimes people win little prizes like stickers and whatnot. And then we do that. We also do flashcards. So sometimes we test people's knowledge at the end of each module by saying, hey, do you know what Amazon calls, like if there was a bucket named Super Troopers, what would the URL be, for example, right? And in this case, it shows Super Troopers at s3.amazonaws.com, although there is a second option, but we'll just stick with the first one, right? And so we do quizzes and flashcards during the actual virtual content to kind of grab your attention, pull you in. And there are, like I said, sometimes there's prizes involved, so it's kind of nice for people, right? And combine that with the video content, and we are constantly reaffirming your interaction and your connection with the primary instructor. The other thing that we do is that we will frequently avoid doing just lecture, and sometimes we'll pivot over to things, and I'm going to show you an example. Like we'll pivot over to something like, oh, here's a great image of SAP and VPCs and a deployment model. And what will happen is I'll start annotating the drawing to add some customization to it so you can get a sense of like, oh, what is Michael talking about? Well, I wanted to talk today about how network access control lists are stateless firewalls, so you need a rule for both the inbound and the outbound access. But don't forget, you also have security groups in play, and those are fully stateful. And so I might emphasize the security group here and the security group here, or I might switch to a box, and maybe I'll switch to a red box because I wanted to make sure that we double emphasize, like, yep, here's the security groups. Look at all these guys. And so we'll use drawings a lot to kind of take us out of the lecture notes and into something more interactive. The other thing that we'll do is that we might just not work on drawings. We might switch over to a whiteboard. Let's say we're talking about ECS and doing microservices. I might, ECS is the Elastic Container Service, by the way, on AWS. And what I might do is I might draw a cluster of hosts and say, all right, here we go. We've got some instances, some like EC2 instances or underlying instances. And here we've got our blue microservice. And over here, we've got our green microservice. And we've externalized the database, for example, to say RDS, which is the relational database service. And I might sit here and draw relational lines to emphasize, hey, by the way, these guys are talking to this database. Over here, these guys are talking to the blue database, right? Just as a way of kind of creating interaction and engagement so that we're not just always looking at the lecture notes or always looking at the web pages. Like there's a way to kind of visualize these concepts. And probably the last thing that we do quite frequently is that we will, and I'm going to share my desktop again, we will do demos, for example, especially with AWS, very useful. So here I might come in and run an AWS EC2 describe instances demos because I want to show how the command line works and how it functions. I could then also switch over to the management console and say, you know what, let's go look and see what that command line was looking at. So we'll bring up demos, and so we'll do this as a way of disrupting the normal lecture flow to kind of emphasize and say, hey, here we are, this is what this looks like, this is how you use it, this is Ansible around AWS, this is CLI around AWS, and so we'll use those techniques. So to re-summarize, we use cameras, both a primary camera and a 360-degree camera, which I will actually blow back up so you can see it. And a 360-degree camera so you can see what's going on. We use quizzes and flashcards inside of our virtual classes to disrupt the lecture lab flow so we can challenge you and get you engaged. And sometimes there's incentives, there's like prizes for doing that kind of thing. We also frequently will use annotations, especially around images or whiteboards, in order for you to see and get a more interactive experience so we can draw stuff real time that students are talking about. And then we'll also do a lot of demos, especially on the console or the command line, so that you can see exactly what's going on inside the system that you're actually studying. So I'm Michael Rishi-Forrester, WebH Solutions. That's our highlight of all of our virtual ILT capabilities when it comes to instructor-led classes. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.